Welcome to Tarrant Area Food Bank. Thank you for joining us for our Good and Bad Bugs in the Garden class. We are looking forward to talking about some of the insects that we find in our garden and some of the other bugs that we will see around our spaces. My name is Lauren. I'm a program specialist here at Tarrant Area Food Bank. We'll be talking today about some of the insects that we see in our Tarrant Area Food Bank Learning Garden and also some that we might see at different times of the year. We hope that you will join us on our Facebook page for other classes and also sign up for more classes in the future. If you are joining us through Eventbrite today, the handouts that are for this course are attached to Eventbrite, and we would love for you to use those as you try to determine the best way to handle insects and bugs in your garden. So we'll go ahead and get started today, and we're actually using our Prezi presentation today so that we can take a look at images of some of these insects that we find in our garden and look at the different stages that we might find because they look different, of course, as eggs, as larvae, as adult insects. So we want to really move through this presentation by season. We're going to start with spring because that's the most active time, and then move into some of the insects that we're seeing right now in the hotter parts of summer. So let's get started. We're going to start with our spring insects. This is the time of year that insects start hatching out. Sometimes they've been overwintering underground. They're going to start laying eggs. We won't spend a lot of time talking in this particular presentation about bees and butterflies and our pollinators, but of course those are some really important insects that you can find in the garden. It's very important for us to think about beneficial insects as well, like beneficial nematodes. We'll talk about that as a preventative control measure throughout the presentation. So when you hear me talk about beneficial nematodes, know that what I'm talking about there are the nematodes that you can purchase at a garden center and spray out on your lawn or on your garden that are helpful for plants. You will also hear people talk about nematodes in a bad way because there are some nematodes that are harmful to plants. So we're talking about a different kind when we're talking about those. So we're going to talk about how to have healthy soil and how to have healthy plants throughout this presentation as well, because prevention is usually the best control measure. So we're going to take a look at one of the most commonly noticed insects in our garden. This is one that every experienced gardener has in their garden. Aphids are a soft-bodied insect. They love to drink the sap out of the leaves of the plant. So you're going to find these on a lot of your crops. Fortunately, they are eaten by ladybugs. So where you find aphids, hopefully you will also find an active crop of ladybugs that are working to keep the aphid population down. We're going to talk about some ways to encourage ladybugs. Usually when we find the first aphids in our garden, we will leave one plant with a few aphids until we start to see ladybugs coming. We don't really work on control measures until the population of aphids seems to be overwhelming the number of ladybugs that we have present. So we're going to work on healthy plants to keep aphids away first. Then we're going to encourage our ladybugs to come and join us in the garden and help us fight the aphids. And then after that, we're going to work on some control measures like a hard water spray is usually the first place we start. If that's not working, you can also mix up a spray bottle full of water with a little bit of soap added. Just dish soap works really well, or garlic pepper tea if you would like to use that. Because they are such soft bodies, usually hard water spray is the easiest way to get started for a small problem. So let's take a look at what these little creatures look like. These come in lots of different colors. You'll see green aphids, you're going to see brown aphids, white aphids, black aphids. So this is the body shape that you're looking for, but don't be surprised if you see a little bit of variety in the coloration. Now you'll also see, when you see aphids, you will typically see a honeydew. That's what their excrement is called. It's kind of a sweet, syrupy, sticky residue that's left on the leaves of plants. It's very popular with ants. So you will actually see ants come and farm the aphids. This is a picture of a ladybug eating the aphid. This is what we want to see. So sometimes on one plant, you're going to see a complete ecosystem. You'll see ants that are farming the aphids, moving the aphids from one place to the other on the plant, and then drinking that honeydew off of the plant. And then you'll see ladybugs in multiple stages of development, which we'll look at down the road in our presentation a little bit, eating the aphids. So this is a great, if you're trying to teach a science lesson to children or to adults, plants with aphids are a great teaching tool because you can see so much about ecosystems and how they exist in the garden. So this is what you usually will see when you're looking on the undersides of leaves. Most pest insects like to be on the underside of leaves. So if you just glance at the top, you may not see a big problem. Just turn those leaves under, and what you're going to see is how big your problem is. If it's one or two, you might be fine. You might just wait for the ladybugs. If you have a large population like this, then you know you need to start actively controlling those a little bit more. So we're talking about good bugs and we're talking about bad bugs, right? So the aphids are what we would consider in the garden to be bad bugs, or insects that hurt our plants. Assassin bugs are actually one of the beneficial insects that help us in the garden. So this is an insect that helps us to control some of the aphids. So we have the aphids, and they're controlled by both ladybugs and assassin bugs. You're going to see these on a number of plants. Sometimes the nymphs of this particular insect can look a little bit terrifying. The name is terrifying, right? And so you want to encourage gardeners in your garden to not squish this particular bug. I noticed that we have a question that has come in. Why are aphids different colors? What a wonderful question. That is a question that I don't have a great answer to, and I wish that I did. I wish I was such an expert on aphids that I knew that. My understanding is that sometimes at different stages of development, you will get some different colored insects, but I am going to have to do some more research on that, and when I have done more research, I will add it to anyone who has joined this class. I would be happy to share that back out with you. I should have started this way. Anytime there is an insect that I don't know as much as I wish I did about, I usually go to resources like the Texas Bug Book that is written by Howard Garrett and Malcolm Beck. That's one of my personal favorites. So just like with gardening insects, there's always something new to learn. Feel free to do some extra research along the way. AgriLife Extension is always a great resource for more information about insects and gardening as well. So thank you for that question. If you have other questions throughout, please do ask them in the comment section. And if I don't know the answer, I will be happy to look it up, and then I'll know more and we can share that out with the group as well. So we're taking a look at the assassin bugs that can actually eat some of the aphids. So I want to take a look at how they do that. You can see that they actually have specialized mouth parts that are perfect for drinking the life blood out of the aphid or the insect that they're feeding on. So these are going to be a great companion for us in the garden, help us fight some of the pests that are eating our plants. Another helper in our garden are wasps. We often will hear people talk about wasps as something that they don't want to see in their garden because they don't want to get stung. Not all wasps are interested in stinging people. In fact, really none of them are. They use that as a defense mechanism. There are wasps of all different sizes. So you will find the large wasps that act both as pollinators and control measures for larger insects. So these are wasps that will parasitize caterpillars. They can also take care of things like potato beetles. That's a really an interesting one to watch. A wasp eat a potato beetle is a very fascinating thing to watch. So we want to have wasps in our garden. Some of them are very small. We're going to take a look at trichogramma wasps in this, as well as the red wasp that we typically see. So here you can see a wasp that's actually parasitizing an aphid, or it looks like stinging, right, an aphid. So this is an insect that we don't want being fought by an insect that we do want. So this is what we want to see in the garden. We want active ecosystems that have lots and lots of insects, so we don't have to do all the work. I mentioned parasitizing the caterpillars. This is what happens. Wasps will often lay eggs actually on top of a caterpillar or inside, and then that caterpillar will become food for the insects. I will mention to you that throughout this presentation, I will interchange insects and bugs. I try to use the word bug because we're talking about a large category, right? We're going to talk about snails and slugs and creatures in our garden that are not necessarily insects. Insects refer to a specific number of body parts and legs. So we'll try to keep it pretty general by using the word bug through most of the presentation. This is a trichogramma wasp tag. These are an extremely beneficial insect to have in the garden. It's easy to go in the spring and buy a trichogramma tab from a local garden center or nursery. This is it. It's this simple. You just slip it onto a tree branch in your garden. I find that one tab does very well for our quarter-acre garden. So it's a pretty simple thing to pick up, and this is covered in eggs. So we just put those out in the garden so they can hatch out and help us fight insects in the garden that we don't want, that might eat our plants. So again, this is the wasp that everyone thinks of, right? When we talk about wasps, and people go immediately to the red wasp. I've seen red wasps and yellow jackets, paper wasps, actually fighting potato beetles, and I'm a big fan of that. So I love to see these in the garden. We just want to make sure that they're not building their nests in a place that isn't safe for our gardeners. That's the real thing that we need to watch out for. So moving back and forth between our pests and our beneficials, the next insect that we're talking about is our cucumber beetle. Cucumber beetles, if you are running a community garden, you'll probably be familiar with people coming up to you and saying that they found yellow ladybugs. Anytime you hear someone talking about yellow ladybugs, that's a great sign that you might want to check for cucumber beetles. So take a look around your cucumbers, your melons. These little creatures can do a lot of damage. Prevention is one way that we try to fight off cucumber beetles. We do like to plant radishes as a companion plant with our melons and our cucumbers, especially white icicle radishes. We find that those are a helpful deterrent companion plant. It's not going to keep them away completely, but it will at least give you kind of a fighting chance. Of course, we want to have healthy plants. That's true of everything. If you do need to control these, beneficial nematodes are a help. Beneficial nematodes are going to help with a number of insects that we talk about today. You can actually buy beneficial nematodes at the garden center. You just mix it with water, strain out the material that those beneficial nematodes are holding on to, and then use that mixture to water your garden or your lawn. It's going to help with some of the control measures. You do that in early spring. So usually I'll go in April and pick up both the trichogramma wasp tag and the beneficial nematodes at the same time, and I'll just do all of that then. You can also let out ladybugs. We'll talk about ladybugs in a minute, but it's kind of a good time of year to do all of that. So I just put that on my garden calendar for April. If you do need to do a more significant control, you can mix orange oil or neem oil. You're going to see that on a lot of the slides that we talk about as a control measure. If you're mixing up orange oil, that comes in a concentrate. Just mix 1 tablespoon to the gallon. Do wear gloves when you're mixing that up so you're not pouring orange oil on your skin by mistake. Just keep everything very safe as you're applying it, and always read the directions on the package no matter what kind of insect control you're using. So let's take a look at these a little bit closer. So if you start to hear about your cucumber beetles coming in, you want to come and take a look and see if you're seeing damage like this. So they will damage both the leaves and the rinds of your cucumbers and your melons. So keep an eye out for those. Green lacewings are one of the better insects that you can find in the garden. They're beautiful. They're a wonderful help to the garden. They're going to eat aphids. This is another aphid fighter. So we want to try to keep as many lacewings as we possibly can in the garden. I want to take a look first at the adult stage. This is where they get their name, of course. They have these beautiful lacy looking wings. So we're going to go through our garden and look for those adults. But more often, what I find in the garden are actually the eggs. So you may see some of the kind of nymph stage eating your aphids, but what I typically find in the garden are actually the eggs. And these are some of the most beautiful egg cases that you'll find in the garden. They hang off of a very long, thin stalk or thread. And again, look on the undersides of leaves. If you have been pruning in your garden, cutting back some plants, cutting back some leaves, harvesting, and you find a leaf that's been cut off and has these eggs on it, it's worth finding a spot for that leaf so that those egg cases can be protected and still hatch out, because every single one of those is going to give you more of a fighting chance against the bad insects in your garden. So slugs and snails, this is our worst pest, right, of the season. Every season's a little bit different. And when I say season, I really mean year to year. Some years are worse for slugs and snails than others. For us, this particular year, we have had slugs and snails and roly-polies. So we will talk about those and what we do. The control measures are really similar for slugs and snails and then for pill bugs. So when we talk about pill bugs in a little bit, you'll notice that that's very similar control-wise. These are happiest when there is damp soil, lots of organic matter that they can hide under, and lots of plant material that they can eat. If you have planted a brand new crop and you put it out and there are no plants when you come back in the morning, there's a pretty good chance that you have slugs and snails or pill bugs. So take a look, see if you find kind of a slime trail is a good indicator that you have slugs or snails. They are going to eat on decaying matter, which is good. So it's not bad to find them around your compost pile, but it is a problem if you have planted brand new little tender crops and they decide to have a little bit of living material as well. So we want to control these usually with things like diatomaceous earth that dry out their skin. So you'll see DE as a control throughout a lot of this presentation. DE stands for diatomaceous earth. This is pulverized sea creatures. So it's the fossilized remains of sea creatures, right, all crushed up. It makes a desiccant or a drying agent that can help to dry out some of those or lacerate the skin of some of these insects. We put this out anytime we plant new crops that might be fragile. We're going to water them in really well, and then we'll add that DE, and that helps us deter some of those. You can also try something like hot pepper flakes or coffee grounds. Those are usually pretty readily available and can be a deterrent for more than one thing. So good idea to take a look. Most of us know what slugs and snails look like, but of course when we are referring to slugs, we're referring to this creature right here in front of you, if you've never seen a slug. Snails, we're looking at snails that have shells, of course. This is the kind of damage that they do. So if you're walking through your garden and you notice that a lot of the leaves have just been covered in holes like this, or if the crop is completely mowed to the ground, you can bet that it's probably snails or slugs. Squash bugs are a very common problem in this area. Those who grow squash are to be respected because they have managed to outsmart the squash bugs and squash vine borers that we will talk about in a minute. Organic control measures are what we try to follow. I will tell you that squash bugs are a hard one to fight. So the easiest way to start here is to find the eggs and crush the eggs before they become a problem. So check your plants regularly, keep really healthy plants. Try to plant at times when the squash bugs might be less active. Growing squash in the fall is a good idea because they are more active in the spring. So we will take a look at what the eggs look like and what the different stages are look like so that you kind of know what you're looking for. My personal favorite way to control these is to get a plastic cup that has a lid and has a hole for a straw, and just hand pick those and put them down through the hole. That's the easiest way to do it, but it is very time consuming. So if you can find the eggs underneath, let's go ahead and take a look at the eggs first. So when you see these little squash bug eggs, this is what you want to go ahead and get off of your plant so that they don't turn into the larval stage. They like to be in groups at this stage, and they will kind of run as a pack. They'll sort of run as a herd. So once you try to pick one, they're all going to scatter. And once you get to this stage, of course, it's very hard to control that many insects. So try to go ahead and take a look for those eggs. And if you do see the insect, go ahead and take a look at the adult now. This is what the full adult looks like. Hand picking is a great way to do this. And I'm taking a look to see, I have another great question up. So we'll address that in just a minute. This is the damage that you'll see from some of the squash bugs. So if you start to see this on your squash plants, go ahead and take a look at this. Look under the leaves, look under the healthy leaves, and go ahead and cut these leaves off of your plant and remove as many eggs as you can. The great question that I had come in that I will do some more research about is the difference between neem oil and hydrophobic extract. I love that I'm going to get to learn the answer to that question because I don't know the answer to. I'm very happy to tell you that I don't know everything, and this gives me the opportunity to learn as a gardener as well. So I will do that research and put that up when this class is, if this class is posted to our Facebook page, I will post the answer there, but I will make sure that it's emailed out to anyone who's in attendance today. Please do feel free to, if you would like to introduce yourself in the comments section and let us know where you garden. We would love to know more about who's in attendance today, and that helps us to make sure that we're sharing the information that you need after the presentation. So let's take a little bit of a look at summertime insects. This time of year, our pollinators are still there, of course, but they're also slowing down a little bit. So we're going to take a look at 4 large insects that are kind of a problem in our gardens this time of year. Again, this is by no means inclusive of every insect that you're going to see in the garden. So if there's a specific insect that you're having a problem with that we don't mention in the presentation today, please comment that in. We would love to know insects that you want to know more about as well. Another question before we start looking at them, is it okay to compost squash bug damage? This is any kind of insect damage or plant diseases. This is something that composters will sometimes disagree about. We have a hot compost pile, and I tend to compost most things. Now, there is a chance that your compost pile will not get hot enough to kill off all insect eggs, and there is a chance that your compost pile will not get hot enough to kill all plant diseases. So the best answer is, if you want to make sure that you don't have any chance that you're putting those pests or diseases back out on your garden, then you should not compost them. That said, if you have an active hot compost pile, if you want to try it, knowing that it will kill some but not all, just know that you may have to fight that problem later in your garden. So this is an area where I'll tell you the right answer that I should tell you, but I'll also tell you that I often will compost some of those things because I don't want to put it in the landfill. So just do it at your own risk, I guess, if you decide to do that. So let's take a look at our fire ants. This is something we all fight in this part of the world. Fire ants are less of a problem for plants than they are for the gardener. That said, if you do have a large fire ant mound, it can get so big underground that it does cause roots to have a problem. If you have too many air pockets, that can be detrimental to your plant growth. More than anything, though, we just don't want to put our hand right in a fire ant mound. We will try to prevent this by spraying out the beneficial nematodes. So do your prevention, try to have really healthy soil. We'll try to put out dry molasses, horticultural molasses, as often as we can. Anything we can do to enrich the soil. When we see a mound that's, this size or even smaller, we will try to drench that with a orange oil mix. So we'll do a tablespoon of orange oil, tablespoon of molasses mixed with a gallon of water. Best way to do it is to stir it up first and then drench it. Do know that orange oil you want to be sensitive to what plants you have in that area, right? We want to make sure that we're not using a very strong concentrate on that. We also will put corn gluten out on our mounds, especially if it's not in a garden bed where we might need to germinate seeds. You don't want to put corn gluten out if you are planning to germinate seeds there, because they just won't sprout. But when we find them in our pathways, especially, we will add corn gluten. It helps a little bit with the fire ants, but we find that it also just marks the pile well. It's a good organic way to mark the pile. so that your volunteers in your community garden or you yourself and your family as a gardener can see that there's a mound there. It will also make them move, and when fire ant piles move, typically they're more above ground for a while, and so you can see them to do a little bit easier to do a drench. Doing this right after it rains is another good option because you're just able to see them better. So just an up close on what this particular insect looks like. They're absolutely incredible creatures. We just want to not have them sting us as we're trying to grow food. So close up on the mounds, we're all pretty familiar with those, unfortunately. If you have a great organic solution to fire ants, please share that in the comments. We are all learning from each other about new and different ways to treat these insects. So we would love to hear your thoughts and your experience with all of this. We learn at our learning garden all the time from our volunteers and from those that come to garden with us. This is an insect that is often confused for the assassin bug. The assassin bug, of course, is the beneficial that we talked about earlier that shows up often in the spring. In the summer, we start seeing our leaf-footed bugs. You can actually take a look. When we zoom in on this picture, you'll be able to see that there's a little bit of a leaf shape on the leg. So that's how you know what they are. They are very big, and they will fly up off the plant. And so usually when we have children out to the garden, these insects will startle them. Then we know we need to do some control measures. So we want to take a look at the damage that they do. I consider these maybe not the worst pests that we have in the garden, but the damage that they do can really affect the appearance of your crops. So you do want to take care of them. And by take care of them, I mean eliminate them from your garden. I don't actually mean raise them as pets. So here we have some of the nymph stage, very distinctive, but it can be confused sometimes for the assassin bug just because, you've got that same black and red. They're similar, even though they're not the same insect. So this is some of the damage that you might see from a leaf-footed bug. Usually you'll see areas where it's kind of been drained in that one little patch. So spider mites are something that you will often find on your tomato crop. This is one that's very distinctive once you know what to look for. They're a very tiny red mite, but they can form kind of a webbing. And that's why, we know to call them spider mites, right? That's how I remember what it is I'm looking at. You will control these in a lot of the same ways that we're talking about. You can do the citrus oil, you can do the garlic pepper tea. These are some natural controls. But if you have a healthy garden ecosystem with lots of ladybugs, lots of lacewings, hopefully you're not going to have to deal with these a whole lot. A hard water spray is a good first step with spider mites as well. Go ahead and spray your plants off really well. And then if you need to treat them beyond that, you can certainly do that. So just to zoom in, this is what the little spider mites look like. And then the damage is actually going to be reflective of where they have sucked the sap out of the leaves. So you get this kind of overall mottled look on the leaves of the plants. So keep your eye on the spider mites because they will drain your plant very quickly. And a plant that's not healthy, that's been drained of its sap, can't be very productive, can it? So squash vine borers. So in the spring, we get hit by all of our squash bugs. And then just about the time you think you've survived the squash bugs, you get the squash vine borers in full force. Squash vine borers are another one that are just hard to fight. So organically, this is the one you'll hear organic gardeners tell you all sorts of home remedies for. You'll hear people talk about yellow solo cups full of water that attract the adult. They'll fly into them thinking it's a squash flower and get trapped in the water and die. You'll hear people talk about putting a pin in the larva stage. So if you think that a larva has entered the squash vine, you can put a straight pin right in that spot, and hopefully you get in exactly the right spot, and the plant can continue to live and the insect will not. I have definitely heard of people putting foil around the base of the squash vine. Sometimes people will try to grow the squash vine plant, germinate them inside, and get the plant a little bit larger so that they're putting the plants out at a time that's maybe a little more optimal to avoid some of the squash vine borers. You can use BT. BT stands for Bacillus thuringiensis. BT is a helpful organic control measure against this particular crop. You can make a solution of BT in water that I have heard people will inject into the stem of the plant. I have not tried that myself, so if any of you have experience doing that and would like to comment in with details about how well that has worked for you, we would love to hear that. Beneficial nematodes can help, again, as an active control. You've heard me say that several times. So that's why we use them. They can help fight off a number of different pests. So this will actually eat your crop from the inside out. So the adults all those who hate squash vine borers are going to hate me for saying that this is a beautiful adult stage of the insect. They're not terrible to look at, so you might see them flying around your garden and think, oh, how pretty, if you don't know what they are. But this is what they will do to your squash plant. Again, all the respect to those who grow squash well from season to season, and we would love to hear all the tips that you have. We tend towards planting varieties of squash that are a little more resistant. We've had a little more success against these particular pests when we plant patty pan squash and when we plant butternut squash. We have tried planting Hubbard squash as a trap crop because squash vine borers tend to really love that particular plant, and then when they attack that one, we just pull them all up and throw them in the dumpster. So that's, again, we fight them in lots of ways, so we'd love to hear your tips. Fall, really the only fall pest that we're gonna, or not pest, fall insect that we're going to talk about, and I said insect, I meant bug, right? Our general term is spiders, because we're going to really want to see a lot of good spiders coming in the fall. This is a little bit better time for garden crops, so that you don't have to fight the pests quite as much. That said, you're still going to see the pests that we talked about in the summer. You're still going to see some of those and some of the spring ones. So still pay attention to what's in your garden. But anytime you see spiders, encourage these, build habitats for them, try to have places where they can hide and build webs. That keeps us from having other insects that can harm our plants. So I see that a question has come in: what kind of flowers and plants attract pollinators? This is a great question. We want to have lots of wildflowers in our garden. We can plant things like tansy, like yarrow. We want to have lots of color in our garden to attract our pollinators. If you want to build a monarch way station, there's some great information about how to do that to attract that particular kind of butterfly. We like to make sure that there are wildflower patches all through our community garden. Everything from large sunflowers to bachelor's buttons. We have tansy, we do have yarrow, we have rock rose. So anything Turk's cap that is a great wildflower. You will also find a list on the handout that's attached. If you look at your handout about good bugs and bad bugs, there is a list of helpful plants that you can plant for pollinators on that as well. So definitely, pull that out and use it when you are planting your garden. So let's take a look at some of these spiders in detail. These beautiful arachnids don't fall under that specific insect category I was talking about earlier, but we want to see lots of spiders in our healthy ecosystem. So we do winter gardening in this part of Texas because we have such a mild climate in the winter. We are usually growing lots of greens in the winter, other plants that can survive the cold, right? And so we will see a lot of insects that like to attack leafy greens. So let's take a look at some of these because we do need to continue to be vigilant against insects even when it's starting to get cold outside. We're growing a lot of cabbages, so those leafy greens are very susceptible to cabbage loopers. We want to, again, use things like BT, hand pick them if you see them. BT is a great option against cabbage loopers. We do want to use it sparingly. Just use it in the amount that you need for that specific crop because they will also affect the caterpillars of butterflies and your pollinators. So we always want to be mindful of who we're affecting when we treat insects. So the cabbage looper looks pretty adorable right up until it makes holes in your cabbage like this. I just clicked right past the adult stage of this. Usually what we're going to see are the little loopers on our cabbages, and we want to go ahead and get those off just as soon as we can. Another insect that we see a lot is flea beetles. Now, I will usually see flea beetle damage on our eggplants when we first put out eggplants. That's the typical place that I see that damage in early spring. So you'll notice that this is talking about flea beetles in the winter section, even though we start to see some of that damage in spring, and that's because we're talking about some insects that overwinter in the soil. So you can actually help to control some of your insects by controlling them first in their overwintering stage when possible. So we have our flea beetle. Usually I will actually see the damage of these before I see the insect because the insect is very, very small. So the damage will usually show up and then you know that you need to control the insect. So this is what you might see lots and lots of tiny little holes. Sometimes they're even smaller than this and very close together. And I see a question also about getting rid of beetles. So since we're talking about flea beetles, beetles are a little bit different. I don't worry as much about getting rid of beetles as I do about flea beetles because the damage is a little bit different. But I'll look into some more specifics on that, and we can talk about that in kind of our follow-up email. So we also want to think about harlequin bugs when we're talking about winter going into spring. Harlequin bugs are considered a pest to crops because they can absolutely decimate your Chinese cabbage or your Napa cabbage, your regular cabbage, kale, mustard greens, collard greens, anything that has been in the winter season and has been doing beautifully. And you get to that week or two that's kind of that transitional week between winter and spring. And maybe you're trying to hold on and let the plants get just a little bit bigger before you harvest them. And that's when you start to see harlequin bugs. Harlequin bugs, usually if you hear people in your community garden talking about weird looking ladybugs, they're talking about harlequin bugs. And when we look at the picture, you'll see why. Once you've seen a harlequin bug and you know that's what it is, you'll know them forever. I mentioned that they are a pest, but I I've come to sort of think of these as an early alert system for our plants or for changing out crops. Ideally, we would harvest every crop before the harlequin bugs even can get to them, right? But anyone who runs a community garden knows that we are always walking a thin line between balancing the ideal with reality. And sometimes you can't get all of the crops out as soon as you wish you could. Maybe they need to finish up a little bit, or you just don't have the volunteer hands that you need to harvest out that particular crop. So when I see a harlequin bug, I take that as a sign that we really need to prioritize getting that crop out of the garden before they spread. So let's take a look at what these look like. You can hand pick these as far as control is concerned, but really your best bet when you start to see harlequin bugs is harvest the out of season crops. They really don't bother crops that aren't out of season. This is where you're going to notice them. You're going to notice them in that adult stage. So again, this is why people will say weird looking ladybugs, right? Same kind of color, spotted, but definitely a different creature. Once you know that there is an adult harlequin bug situation on your plant, you know that you're also going to find lots of harlequin bug eggs, and they're smaller nymph stages as well. So take a look on the underside of plants. I will often find the eggs of harlequin bugs on the crop that's right next to the crop that they're attacking. So if you plant lots of different crops in your garden, sometimes you'll find these eggs on the underside of the crop that's sitting right beside the one that's being attacked. So if you're not finding eggs where you think you should, just look one row over and see if you can find them there. You can just pull these eggs off if you are trying to control them as you finish off your harvest, but really spend your time harvesting, not trying to control. This is the kind of damage that they do. And I saw that I have another question that has come in. A homemade garlic spray recipe, great to share. Garlic can actually be pureed in a gallon of water. I would use about 4 cloves of garlic to a gallon of water, puree them, strain it out, and you can spray that on your plants. I will get a better recipe for you that's more specific, that usually people will also mix in about a tablespoon of soap as well. Make sure that you're not doing that in full sun, because anytime you're adding something that has oil in it, and garlic does have some oil, soap has a little bit of oil in it typically, citrus oils, neem oils, make sure that you're not applying those in the heat of the day so that you're not burning the leaves on your plants. And again, whatever treatment you're using, read the directions, right? If you're buying it pre-made, if you're buying it from a store, make sure you know how to mix it before you start applying it. Recipes for homemade things, we've mentioned garlic pepper tea. Some of those recipes you can actually find in the book that I mentioned. Howard Garrett's pages will often refer to garlic pepper tea or garlic spray as a control. You'll also hear people talk about planting garlic as a deterrent within their garden, and that's just a great companion plant for most crops. So if it's October, you want to put in some garlic, definitely do that throughout your garden as well. Ladybugs, everyone's favorite, right? This is one of our most beneficial insects. This is right up there with green lacewings. So these will overwinter. We want to keep these in our soil. And then we're going to start seeing the eggs laid in early spring. And then we'll start seeing the adults as well. So let's take a look at the different stages. There are a lot of varieties of ladybugs. We don't want to get set that this is the only style of ladybug. They're all beneficial to our garden. The eggs, don't confuse these for squash bug eggs. We want to make sure, of course, that we know the difference in the eggs. These are this beautiful kind of yellow egg shape, orange egg shape. So take a look for those. Then you're going to see the next stage is the one that I always teach. Whenever we have ladybugs, I will pull anyone in our garden over to make sure they know that this is ladybug as well. Everyone knows the adult, but not everyone knows the nymph. And these are really important for eating aphids and other pests in our garden. So make sure that you know those little monsters. They will start out smaller and get larger, and then you'll actually see them hold onto the plant, and as they transform into the adult version, right, as their exoskeleton splits so that they can become the adult stage of this insect. Pill bugs, you will start seeing pill bugs. We see them most in spring, right? But again, they can live for 1 to 6 years. So we will see them over winter. We want to make sure that we're controlling these as best we can, because they do eat decaying matter. But again, just like the snails and slugs that we talked about earlier, they are going to eat live plant material. So if you have a brand new tender little crop, they will just completely eat through the stem, eat the leaves. If you've planted strawberries, they will ball up on that strawberry and eat the whole thing. So again, our main control here is DE. Another effective control measure can be just putting out a piece of wet cardboard, and they will tend towards accumulating under that cardboard, and then you can just take it and throw it in the trash. That's an effective control measure. You can put out, I've heard people use eggshells. Of course, anytime you're working with eggshells, good idea to boil them or bake them to make sure that you have killed any kind of harmful bacteria, right? And then crush them up and put them out on your garden. We've had limited success with that. We have tried it as a replacement for DE, similar kind of style of control. But it also adds calcium to your garden, so it's not a bad thing, even if it isn't 100% effective. I'm taking a look at another question that's come in. The question was, should we apply a pest solution on a controlled section? Absolutely. If you want to, if you're trying to do control and you want to see if it's working well for you. Now, again, you know, if you're buying a pre-made, pre-mixed sort of pest control measure, then I would make sure that you are following the instructions on that package. So some of them will say only use this 7 days or 30 days before harvest. So just to clarify, like if you have it in a controlled section, some gardens are open versus other, you know, gardens that are, you know, the area can be controlled. So if you're putting out a pest control measure that has any potential to affect the safety of a crop that might be eaten, then you definitely want to make sure that's in a controlled environment where no one can come into your garden and pick something and eat it right away. If you're trying to do a test to see if it's effective and you want to have a control population of plants, and then the rest of your garden, you could certainly, you know, use it on one patch, see if it works well for you, and then use it on the rest. Or if it's something you already know works well, you can use it on your whole garden. Just make sure you take any precautions that are on. If you're using a commercial pest killer, you want to make sure that you're using and taking all of those precautions. I hope that answered your question. If not, please feel free to give me any more questions or details in your comment. I really appreciate the questions. That makes this class more interactive, and it helps us all to learn from each other as well. So thank you all for sharing those. This is a pill bug up close and personal. Most of us played with these as children if we don't work with them daily as adults. These wonderful little creatures will roll up in a ball, and they are very, very hungry. This is what they will do. They will just ball up on the plant and eat every last bite of it. I have seen them consume an entire strawberry in under 30 minutes. They're very hungry creatures. And we we like to control those, again, mostly with diatomaceous earth. And if we have a large school group coming out, sometimes they'll just go through the garden and pick them up for us. I did get a question about rats, which I won't go into detail about for this particular class. We'll try to focus on bugs for this one. But with any kind of rodents, my best suggestion would be if you have a compost program, make sure that you're going to cover any kind of food scraps or food waste with a layer of brown carbon materials. Make sure you don't leave those exposed. If you're having a problem with that, of course you could set traps for them if you feel safe doing that in your particular environment, or cover some of your fruits with netting. It's not a fail-safe. Again, I won't focus much more on it, but I hope that you find a good solution, because I know that can be a problem for some gardens. So I appreciate you guys joining us today. I hope that you will comment in with any other questions. You can join us for more classes at www.tarantareafoodbank.eventbrite.com. We hope that you will sign up for more classes there, and join us at www.tafb.org for more information about our garden program, to find food, other programming, and of course you can follow us on Facebook and other social media platforms as well. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.